Well, Friday night, and it's great to have your company wherever you joined us on the Flow Broadcast Network, or if you're catching a podcast of the Friday Night Sports Show. Ellis Gellius and Wayne the Flowman Phillips with you. And we've got a little bit more to come from Jace the Statman Regan, who is going to cover country football pretty soon. Ellis, I'm going to ask you about tennis. Now, this is an interesting discussion because a long, long time ago, nearly 20 years ago, there was a fair bit of stuff going on about cricket match fixing, some tennis games match fixing. In fact, actually, historically, in about 2003, the Russian tennis player in Yevgeny Kafelnikov was one of the players that they was said to have fixed a tennis match for gambling that was on that tennis match. And as a backdrop, it's not a good situation when two of the absolute stars of the world of tennis right now get beaten in Rotterdam and get beaten early on, and you scratch your head and you say, wow, that is a very interesting result from Daniil Medvedev, who was the loser in the Australian Open, and his semi-final opponent at the stage that actually he beat was Stefanos Tsitsipas.
Yes, as admirers of the great game of tennis, we've got to cross our fingers and hope that it's mere coincidence. But a huge upset, if you look at it that way, from Medvedev. Obviously, we saw such a bipolar performance from him in the latter stages of the Australian Open. Obviously, a finalist beating Stefanos Tsitsipas, who we'll discuss in a moment. But Medvedev absolutely bottling it in the final, losing to Lajovic, a fellow player from that region, 6-7, 4-6, which is quite remarkable to think that Dani Medvedev, who is just coming off a blistering Australian Open, absolutely got crumbled.
Yeah, and he got done in the final, which he was playing against one of the greats of all time in Novak Djokovic, so there's no disgrace there. He was overawed and overwhelmed at the Australian Open, but you wouldn't have thought he would have been in a match at Rotterdam. It just, I guess, the best players in the world can still lose on their day. What about the Stefanos Tsitsipas? Because he lost, and you have to say, he lost quite ordinarily.
Yes, he did. Losing, obviously, in that semi-final to Medvedev. It was really quite a poor display considering how exhilarating he played against the great Rafael Nadal to get to the semi-final. But Tsitsipas, interestingly, struggled to beat Herbert Hurkacz, in what was a really quite a close game indeed. He got up 4-6, 6-4, 5-7, but it does go to show that with both Tsitsipas and Medvedev, obviously the psychology of tennis, it can hang around after your most recent games not being at your best, and I think we've seen that in the Rotterdam Open. I think
the injury factor too comes into it, and who the other players are in the tournament. Now, talking about other players, the great Roger Federer. Is this the last year for Roger? And the fact that he was out of the Australian Open with injury, now out of the Miami Open with injury, and claiming that he's going to practice now and work his way back into some level of fitness. It would indicate that is he going to be ready for the French? Will he be ready then to take on the rigours of Wimbledon, which he may fancy himself as a slight little chance to be able to go there against Novak? And even Rafael Nadal, I think he'll certainly front up and play well at the French. Is Roger, this is it? Is this the swan song at 39?
It kind of has to be. In all my lifetime of watching tennis, I can't remember someone going on this long. He's going to turn 40 this year. As you outlined, didn't play in the Australian Open. Similarly to everyone else, pretty much missed out on the entire 2020 calendar, so that's going to catch up on him in a physical sense. You'd just think that, if this isn't pure selfishness from the great Federer to drag things out as long as possible, then he's obviously readying himself to go out on a high in one of the big opens, possibly the Roland Garros or Wimbledon.
Yeah, I reckon he's got no chance on clay, but on the fast Wimbledon service, serve and volley, Federer can do that at exceptional levels, and if he's quick enough and fit enough to get to the net on the serve and get that passing shot, be able to cover it down the line or across the court, then look out for Roger. He will be very hard to throw, but he's got to be fully fit. fit. Mentally, he'd have to be fully fit. And ultimately, he is still going to, I think, be trailing Rafael Nadal in the greatest of all time. And I still think both of them will get passed by the magic man from out of Serbia in the great Novak Djokovic.
Yes, well, Djokovic still has a number of years on both of the former two names that you've outlined there. So I think you could well be right there. But yeah, it's going to be interesting. Will there be crowds? We know that Roger Federer thrives on the back of fantastic support wherever he goes. So, assuming that Wimbledon will be at a half capacity, if any capacity at all, does that factor into things for Roger? Does he even look at going one more year after 2021? It's all quite fascinating, but I think ultimately Novak will triumph both Nadal and Federer.
Yes, it's a great discussion and it continues. We look forward to it happening again as we get to the big tournaments of the French and Wimbledon through the winter part of the season. And Ellis Kelly, it's great to have you talking about it here on the Friday Night Sports Show. You can get a podcast and also at the same time you can see articles from Ellis up on flownews24.com.au.